Greetings, listeners, to this spooky bonus episode of the PrePost film review. I hope you've got your cauldrons bubbling and your eye of newt nearby, as we're going to be talking about the 2015, it came out this year, horror film called The Witch, from director Robert Eggers, I want to say.
Yep, that's correct.
Cool. So this is a movie that I saw at the Melbourne International Film Festival earlier in the year, and Matt, you've just seen at the London International Film Festival.
Correct, I have.
I've already talked about this a little bit in my Myth Roundup and how much I loved it. So I'm really curious to hear what you think. Did I build it up too much? What are your thoughts on The Witch? It's actually not like that at all for anyone listening, by the way.
No, it's not at all. This is an awesome film. I liked it a lot, but I do think you built it up a little bit too much.
I'm sorry.
And well, having said that, I don't think it was entirely your fault. I think it was a two-part thing of you telling me how amazing it was, and then seemingly at the same time it kind of hit this critical mass of festivals where it just blew up, and everywhere I looked online, Letterboxd and film sites that I visit, everyone was just gushing over this horror film.
Always a problem when that happens.
Yeah, so I think no matter how great this film was, it could never, no matter how amazing it was, it could never have lived up to what was in my mind. Not that I had any specifics, but the bar was just set way too high. But having said that, it's such a good film, and I would rank it up there with the scariest horror films I've seen in recent times. Like that and It Follows from last year are two. I put
totally
them.
Agree.
It's a good run, and it usually is like that kind of one good horror film a year for me that really rattles me. And it's last year it was It Follows. This year it's definitely The Witch. Yeah, I loved it a lot. I loved the period setting. I loved that it's kind of just like out of the gate is just fucked, right? I can't think of a better way to describe it. She cuts up a fucking newborn baby, crushes it, and rubs it on her body within 20 seconds. If you haven't seen the film, spoilers.
Yes.
Holy
that's
shit.
Right. Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's so confronting straight away, isn't it? And you're like, it's so good because up until then, it's like this slow burn, it's mysterious, you don't see anything. And then suddenly, it's just like... And this happens a few times in the movies. It only happens maybe 4 or 5 times. But suddenly, you're just in the middle of this hellish imagery.
Yep.
And it's you're just not prepared for it. And you just kind of sink in your seat and oh my god, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this, It's and at the same time, when I say seeing this, it's not like it's particularly gory. It's just that
it's done quite tastefully.
It builds this evil, medieval. I mean, it's not medieval, but it reminds me of those medieval paintings of hell or something.
I know exactly.
You just look at them and it's just like, oh, there is some fucked up shit going on here,
Yeah, I love that. I loved it. I think it's weird. I had a weird experience. This film has been a bit of a weird experience in terms of actually watching it. I felt like there was just, as much as I loved all that sort of stuff, there was something not. There was some part of me wanted something a little bit more. Something little wasn't working, especially towards the end. And I guess we can talk about the specifics at the very end. And I don't mean that because that... I remember you saying in your Myth Roundup that perhaps you're worried that might lose me. It did. If we're talking about the very, very end. And not 100% lose me. I just wish that it had played it. I mean, I guess we can talk about it right now. But right at the very end. I love thematically... fucking hell, I'm jumping all around here, but if we want to reference our review of The Visit, and you were talking about perhaps thematically it was dealing with ideas of if you constantly tell someone or that they are something, that that's what they become, or this film is that. This is what.
Yeah, this film really is.
Yeah, exactly. This does it right. The Visit doesn't.
Yeah.
This does it. And I love that. I loved that. She's repeatedly told by her parents, or the dad in particular, or the mum, I suppose, both of them, that she's evil and she's a witch, and that's what she ends up being at the end. And I love that, like, the play on words of the title and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of specific visuals, like when she rocks up in the forest and they're all kind of like, there's this like circle of witches just like spazzing out over the fires,
writhing around. Yeah,
which was okay. I mean, I think it would have been more creepy for me if they were like stoic and just like sitting there being creepy. Like it was kind of like it didn't ruin it for me.
I totally disagree.
But then the whole like as soon as they started flying, like that was like that lost me. The flying lost me.
Oh no, I didn't. Yeah, that's not what I was talking about when I said.
Oh, interesting.
Because I fucking loved that, the imagery.
Really,
at the end there.
really
It really, really disturbed me. All that stuff, like talking about shots that get burned into your the cinematic part of your brain forever. When she's walking in the woods up to the other witches and they are writhing around the flames, it is just like. I'm going to use the word hellish again, because that's just like, it is just this nightmare imagery for me. And again, it was so evocative of these old paintings of like demonic entities, like all distorted and stuff. Like, and I thought the levitation was really handled really, really well. Like it didn't look silly. It just looked unnatural in a really, really creepy way, as it was meant to, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess. I can see that. I think the
was
writing
such a strong ending
was the least of my issues with it. Like, I think, I don't know. It got to, like, I don't know. There was something about before that. It was this single witch in the forest that was kind of this menace that you never quite understood, and then suddenly there's like a bunch of them, which is fine. And it was like, maybe it was just like a little bit familiar. That kind of like worshipping the fire and that kind of stuff. I'm not saying it was bad. Like isn't what took me out of it. That didn't necessarily creep me out. I was just like, okay, there's just a bunch of naked women worshipping a fire. But it was, there was the levitation that was the thing that was like, it looked a little bit fake when all of the women around the fire started. I admit that when the main character, I'm blanking on her name, when she did it, and it's filmed as like close up, and she kind of like, you can just, you wouldn't even know. I would kind of wish you didn't see the others doing it, and it just kind of did that close up on her, and the trees kind of disappear behind her, and you could have interpreted it either way, because that was a really effective, evocative shot when it was tight on her face. But yeah, I don't know. It just at that point, like, I mean, even I think if some of them were on like broomsticks or like at least sticks, at least there was definitely at least one of them holding something, and it just got a little bit like storybooky. Which, I mean, and I guess I've got a little bit inside knowledge here because the director did a Q&A afterwards, and a lot of he talked about how he based it on actual like.
Yes, I know that was a big thing for him.
And reports. Yeah. So, and he talked a lot about how a lot of those fairy tales were based... Like, these reports came before the fairy tales, so the fairy tales were based on this kind of stuff, which included, like, poison apples and witches and broomsticks and that sort of stuff, which, it was never done in a silly sense, but I don't know, that was just, like, a little bit too far for me. That just pushed it. Do you know what I mean? It lost me a little bit. Yeah. Having said that, it's a minor criticism.
But I guess we'll have to agree to disagree, because I thought it was all that stuff that you say. It was the broomsticks and the witchy poos flying through the air, but it was done in the most realistic way I've ever seen. Like it's just like these fucked
but like
up...
a flying like that. I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know.
It's the best flying I've seen in a movie, because it was like. It wasn't showy at all. It was very subtle, and like they just kind of slowly levitate. It wasn't like, on my broomstick. Whoa.
But it was like all it was a cackle away from that. Like,
I don't think that's.
I guess like what I'm trying to say is that before that it built it up like in such a grounded way. Like it was crushing up kids and like it was rubbing it on. Like, you know, it was all very almost.
But, you know, she flies in that opening scene too. It's just a silhouette that kind of hovers up.
Sorry, say that again. When?
After she covers herself with baby juice. There's a shot of the moon and she starts levitating up towards it. That's the end of that sequence.
Oh, really? I didn't even... I didn't even notice that there was some levitation. Or maybe I just thought it was, like, not literal. I don't know. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Because I didn't even remember that as being a levitational thing. In my mind, it was very much grounded in terms of, like, maybe it's not even that magical. You know what I mean? She's just, like, fucked. There's these, like, fucked people that do this. I mean, obviously it's a little bit weird because she moves so quick with the baby and things, and there's something...
Yes.
I mean, fucking...
I agree. I really like that for the first 2/3 of the movie. It's just like, is there actually supernatural stuff going on or not? But then it firmly is at the end. And I mean, you've got the goat...
Yeah, what's his name?
Representing
the goat
Satan.
Black something or...
Yeah, I can't remember. But even, I mean, we're all over the place, but I love that stuff as well. And I love that shot where it's talking to her. You never see it talk because, of course, that's silly. But then you've got this shot of her face and suddenly this man kind of figure
I just
is
like that, though.
circling around her. Oh,
see,
man, I
really liked... I liked the talk, like, when it came out of, like, behind the camera. And in my mind, like, that was so evocative because... You're right, like, I didn't picture the goat physically talking, but that's what was so creepy about it. But then as soon as they actually humanized it, and it was a guy with a black hat and black gloves, and he, like, was, like, clearly just a man, I don't know, that dropped it way down in the scary levels for me. Before that, it was, like, creepy as shit. Like, it was so cool. Because I was like, there's no way it's going to talk back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to crank up that level of nuts. And then it does, and I was like, shit the bed. Like, I don't know what's happening now. And then when the guy walked out, I was like, oh, okay, well, it's just a man with a black gloves and a black hat on, you know.
Well, yeah, I can totally see where you're coming from there, but I really liked it, and it never really shows him. He's
no,
like
you don't see his face.
He's
kind of like, his face is in shadow.
Yeah,
the whole time.
and again, it's like he's not actually there. I think it's like she's feeling that presence almost or something.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying there is something we can agree on, is that there are times where you go like, oh, this isn't going to happen. Or it can't get much worse than this. And then it does. And it goes to places where you're just like, oh, fuck, well, I did not expect that.
Yeah. I think, I totally agree. And I loved the family dynamic as well. Like, as much as it is a horror film, it's also kind of this, like, chamber piece of this family tearing itself apart. Just because it's so obsessed with this religion and blaming one another for these sins and denying their own sins. You know what I mean? Like, I loved that. I loved all that character stuff that was going. You could almost take out the horror stuff and it would still be a fascinating character piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. That's what elevates this movie. Yeah. I mean, the scares are incredible and the mood is great, but it also has all this fantastic character thematic stuff in that middle kind of section of the movie that is just so good. There's so much to chew on. It's so interesting. It's handled intelligently. I don't know. It's great. Would you say that this movie feels kind of Kubrickian at times? Did you get that feeling?
That's interesting. It's interesting that you should ask that, because I've been thinking about why. Maybe I've just been wondering why I'm not rating it as high as everyone else. And I'm not saying I'm not rating it high. Like, this is probably like a 4 out of 5 for me. Like, it's still top of the pile, and definitely in terms of horror films. But based on the buzz that I was getting, I was wondering why, like, it's not up there with something like The Shining, which is kind of similar in terms of...
I think you could compare them.
Yeah, in terms of, like, confining characters to an isolated space, then watching them just fall apart. And I don't think it's quite... I mean, it's close, and for a fucking debut film, like, holy shit, that's like...
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
You know, fair effort to the dude. But I wouldn't put it on the level of Kubrickian, but
no, neither. I wouldn't either.
I
But
guess
think,
it's on that path, I would say.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, like for a first film, it's extremely promising that the fact that you can compare it to The Shining, and it's not on the same level, but the fact that there are these little similarities and some of the tone of it and just that feeling you get, that uneasy feeling, it reminded me of like films like The Shining and The Exorcist. And I think that's very impressive.
Definitely, just that sense of dread is there. Like they have this like. I mean, this is such a. I mean, it's borderline condescending to break it down to this, but like formally, in terms of just the film uses a lot of really slow like zooms and pans, which is it seems dumb, but that, I swear to God, that makes shit scarier. You know, like just
I totally agree.
And it really uses audio in terms of the soundtrack really well. Like there's this kind of weird hum and it like.
Yes.
I don't want to say chanting, but there's like this.
No, well, it's like exactly.
Yeah, I don't
know. That's the
know.
other thing that reminded me of Kubrick. He could really tap into that weird, like, human voice. This it's in 2001 and in The Shining. You know, there's this like wailing kind of voices.
Yeah.
Again, it's like sounds from just beyond our own. I don't know, level of existence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I totally
it's just
agree.
like. I'm hearing voices that I shouldn't be hearing, kind of.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear what you think about the witch herself, because I think perhaps I've been thinking about it for the last couple of days, and perhaps one of the things that didn't sit right with me, especially when watching it. I mean, post watching it, this has grown on me a lot more. Like the longer I've sat with it and thought about it, but I think especially when watching it, I never. Like 100% understood or felt that the witch was a threat, or what the end game was. I mean, she obviously steals the baby, but I kind of don't even understand what the point of that was. I mean, I guess it made her young, so she could like But then
it was
like,
sorry.
Does she have any plans in terms of trying to infiltrate the family? Because she's like there sometimes, and then there's like old mate Black Goat Boy that rocks up. You know, like there's no clear threat, because you're like, fuck, the witch is gonna fuck with us. And it's like the flip side of this is that I like that there's no 100% clear logic to it, but I feel like this sits in a weird spot where it's like just a little bit skewed to the wrong side. Like they have all these things happen, but there doesn't seem to be. I just felt like it needed a little bit more logic in one end of it, or something. I don't know. I'm talking shit. I don't even understand what I'm saying myself. But I think that's the point. What I'm trying to say is, I could never quite grasp that while I was watching it. I'm wondering if you could like how you felt about that sort of thing.
I think I was probably wondering the same things when I watched it, and then by the end, it felt to me that it is this. Primordial or elemental evil that I guess Satan represents in this story, and that the witches are almost minions carrying out. And so if you're near one, it's just going to fuck with you, and there is absolutely no logic
to it. Yeah.
You know, the only logic is maybe that it physically has to like have blood and dead baby to like. To do its spells or whatever, but it's just like it just wants to tear the family apart, and this particular family are ripe for that as well, I suppose. You know, the seeds are already in them to be corrupted and to turn on each other.
Totally.
And in that process, I think the goat man is like, oh, maybe also I can get another recruit through this whole thing. So I'm going to like plant myself in the barn and just start seeping out evil to everyone. And I find that really frightening when it's just like almost no point to it. It's just like, I'm just going to fuck with you because I can, and I'm just evil.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think that's kind of what I mean by it growing on me post watching it, because in the moment it bothered me a little bit. Like, it was never enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It is a horror film, and you don't want everything laid out. Like, I like the fact that it didn't spell everything out for you, but it did bother me a little bit. But then, since then, you're exactly right. The more I think about it, I kind of have been telling myself that that's the point, that they're just fucking, like, it's just been fucking with them. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, and it does kind of make sense in terms of Is it Black Phillip? Did I just make that up? The black goat, like, because he comes in, that makes more sense. But then there's like the witch just randomly appears at the end, sucking the goat, the bloody goat teat.
Yeah, that specific example was the one point where I was like, oh, this just kind of feels like a scare. For
There's no plot.
Like, why would she be there? Because she's already planted her, like, little evil seeds everywhere.
She
doesn't need to appear at that point.
Seed of my doubt as well.
Yeah, it's just that I will agree on that one little scene, and it was terrifying. But it was in the back of my head. I was like, yeah, but why is she there at this point? Like, we're already so far along now.
Yeah. Having said that, this and The Visit, if you played them as a double bill, you would have a, like, field day with old women asses, like, just everywhere.
Yeah, scary old women asses. That's right. It's the new horror cliche.
Yeah, exactly. No, but there are a lot of, like, just fucking creepy imagery, like the rabbit in this. Like, I love that kind of. I don't know what the word for it is. It's like the way they use, like, nature, but in, like, a strange, like, just unsettling way. Like the way the rabbit just, like, sits there and stares at them. Like, it's a fucking rabbit. It's like a cute little rabbit, but it's scary as shit.
And totally.
Like, when she's milking the goat and the blood comes out. Like, that was honestly one of the most upsetting things for me. Like, I was just, like, I squirmed in my seat and just didn't want to even look. I was like, fuck.
It's just so the imagery is so strong in this movie in a disturbing way. Like, I haven't seen anything like it for quite a while. It's just like, I think I may have said this in the myth thing. It's almost like, I don't know if I should be watching this. You know, it's just like, it's not good for my brain to be seeing this kind of fucked up stuff. Another one that comes to mind is that when the mother is having this fantasy about breastfeeding.
I know exactly.
And then it cuts back to, I guess, reality, and it's just this crow, like, pecking at her tit and eating the flesh. So and it's like, oh man, the cinema was just like a collective, like, oh god, when that happened. It was very surreal and scary and fucked up.
Though I did, like, that was another minor thing, like, not that was a great image, but then I thought that was like, this is the height of the batshit nuts, you know, like, it's all downhill from here, and then the next cut, like, she's back in bed like normal, and she's got, like, a little blood spot on her.
I thought that was a bit strange.
Did she just like snap out of it and go, oh, fuck off, put a, like, 90 back on and get back into bed? Like,
that's right.
She just seemed, like, non-fussed. Like, if she woke up and freaked out about it, maybe that would seem, I don't know, it was just, like, a little bit strange.
That's what I was expecting. Yeah. Unless, the only thing I remember thinking that as well, like, is she kind of fully under the spell now? Like, even when she wakes up, like, she's just totally... Yeah,
maybe.
You know,
like, she just normally just, like, put her gown back on and went to bed as if it was normal, like she'd finished breastfeeding the baby or whatever. Yeah. And the kind of, like, exorcism-esque scene with the brother when he's... After he's been, like... I don't know what happened when he, like, kissed the witch or whatever, then he comes back.
I mean, that's another scene, like... That sticks with me, where they're kissing and then she just kind of, like, takes a bite and it just cuts. Cuts away. It's just like, ugh.
Yeah, and he's, like, how he's kind of, like, writhing and, like, sitting up, and that was really effective and really unsettling. Did you...
Don't they pull something out of his mouth as well?
The apple, he vomits up
that's
apple.
Right, that's right.
The poison, which was the poison apple thing that they were talking about.
Yeah.
Did you realise that he was having an orgasm during that scene?
No, I did. Oh, well, I do remember thinking it was ecstasy, like some kind of spiritual ecstasy, but I didn't know it was an actual orgasm.
which I did not
very interesting.
read at all. Yeah, I was just curious if you...
Okay,
got
so that makes sense in a way, right? Because he was like, kind of, he seemed to be going through puberty,
Yes.
and the
Which I
only
guess
is
is
around that he could perv on was his sister.
Yeah, which is weird.
And so
Yeah.
that's weird, and he probably had like these kind of, that was causing inner turmoil for him. And then his way of being captured by the witch is like a sexual sort of thing. So it makes sense that his character kind of dies by having an orgasm.
Yeah, and like I guess that leads us into thematic stuff. Because like I was going to ask you that exact question, like what sort of thematic stuff did you read on it? And there's pretty obvious psychosexual things with him, at least, like you said, perving on his brother, and I guess perving on his sister, and the sister's sort of like emergence into puberty and like adulthood, is like coinciding with this decision to become an actual witch. And
yeah, I think that's really interesting. There's kind of stuff with the dad as well, as this. He starts off. He's kind of like pretending the whole time, but like he knows what's going on, and he's a leader, and he's like very strong. And then you find out that he lied to the mother and sold her like family cup.
Yeah, the silver cup, whatever. Yeah,
the silver cup, and for a little bit lets the daughter take the blame.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
And he's so righteous, and yet he's doing all these little things and manipulating the family. Yeah, me too.
It.
Yeah, totally. So I found that really interesting.
You're 100% right. Like, I loved the religious stuff with the family and the father in particular. Just the religious themes in general, and like the utter like hopelessness of prayer. Like, it did fucking nothing. Like, they're meant to be these like, diehard Christians or whatever, that did nothing but prayer all the time, and look what fucking happens to them. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, maybe that's just like the atheist in me. That like, I really liked that it was like.
No, I think that is a point.
A part of that. I mean, part of me was worried at the beginning that it was going to have this really religious bent to it, and like the one thing that would be able to overcome this is like God and belief in Jesus. But it was almost the opposite. It was just like, absolutely useless. And it was, even though like at the same time there was clear like satanic, other end of the spectrum stuff, like it was in a religious framework, but I really liked how they played that. Like, I don't know, I thought that was clever.
No, I agree.
And interesting.
And that's definitely, it's not the answer. This movie doesn't suggest that prayer or being a good Christian is the answer.
No.
And I guess it also, they would have been better off just not being, as the father in particular, not being so fundamental in his beliefs, and then they wouldn't have had to leave the town at the start.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. It's just all that stuff.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It's like, it's this weird grey area in terms of like religious belief, and I don't know. It was much more interesting than I had anticipated at the very beginning. And just like randomly, that just reminded me of like a really evocative shot, at least for me, is like when they were kicked out of the settlement at the very beginning. And they're sitting on the cart and kind of like just like riding out of the town, and there's these kind of like Native American Indians that just like kind of walk in, and they have these like weird like bows, and they just like kind of stare at them as they come out. And it was, I don't know, it was just so striking, both because it was like they were kind of part of that township, which is unconventional for like American filmic portrayals of like the West and Native Americans, and like in this film they were almost like integrated within that. Like, and even he talks about like trading the cup for like traps or whatever, right? With some like anyway, but it was also just that creepiness, like they had this like otherworldliness to them, and that the way they just like stared at them as they left, and it was like, I'm talking about this shot like it's this major thing. It's such a throwaway thing as the gates close on them, you know what I mean? But it just struck me, like there's so many little visual moments in this film that managed to strike this unsettling chord that is so rare in horror films these days.
Yeah, absolutely. That opening is soon after that is when they're sort of preying on a sort of hilltop, or they're looking down at the area that they're going to move into, and it's just like the camera is behind them as they're kneeling and praying, I think, and then it just kind of pushes forward over the top of them and zooms in towards
the trees, the forest.
The trees, and that unsettling choral soundtrack just raises, and you're just like, oh man, they're not in a good spot right here.
Get out, go back.
Yeah, go back, guys.
Yeah, I totally agree. So would you put this this is still top of your list for film of the year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Oh, it's up there. I think it's probably one or two others that might be close, but this will definitely be up there, when we do our little year in review, and I can't wait to see it again. I think it's getting a theatrical release early next year in Australia, and I'm going to take Soph to see it.
Oh, she'll love that.
Yeah, she won't sleep for a while, but I just want to show it to people and get them scared, because I really love it.
Yeah. I agree. I can't wait to see it again myself, actually, because I wish I didn't go in with such high expectations, because I think a second viewing could really ground it for me as to where it ranks, and might even pip up a little bit higher, because at the moment, like I said, it's definitely the best horror film I've seen in at least 12 months, if not longer, and it would be in my top echelon. It wouldn't be top spot, but yeah, it's a really solid film, and I'm really glad I checked it out.
Yeah, good stuff.